Hi, Dane. How's it going?
Awesome. Yeah. It's an exciting week, as you know.
Yeah, we're in Watch Launch Week. I think, this podcast will be coming out after our Watches launch, but it's been many months that we've been preparing for this. And so it's finally here.
Too many months, too many months. As I said, like 2 or 3 months ago, we prayed that one day we will be able to have a watch on the market, and finally we
Fine.
do this week. So very excited, and AI a big piece of this. We have been talking about and building AI for kids with Pinwheel GPT and having that built into the product. I just got AI on the brain, and I've been using so much AI at work. It's like AI is kind of what I'm thinking about. And I think we've got a good
Yeah.
guest. I think we've got a good guest for that. So we should bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, welcome to Technically Parenting, sponsored by Pinwheel. Today, we're going to be talking to Sarah Gallagher-Trombley, and she is the digital mom. And she has a Substack newsletter as well as content on TikTok and Instagram. And I'm so excited to talk to her because she used to work at Snapchat. So, she was an executive at Snapchat and then left there partly because the challenges of the social media and her own kids, and so started this business being the digital mom. So, coming from the inside to the outside, I'm super excited to hear about it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And
It's a tech talk from the best of minds. It's a tech talk for these digital times. It's a tech talk. We're here for you. It's a tech talk. Technically parenting. Yeah.
Sarah, welcome to Technically Parenting.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. Yeah, I thought just to start out, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your background, a little bit about, your career before jumping into all things digital parenting with Digital Mom, and sort of lead us up to maybe a little bit of how you got to where where you are and what you're doing.
I'd be happy to. So I have about a 20-year career in media and tech. I worked for big digital media publishers like Time Inc. and Condé Nast. And then I spent the last 10 years of my corporate career in tech. So I worked for Flipboard, which was one of the first iPad apps back in the
Oh yeah,
day.
I
Yeah,
remember Flipboard. Yeah.
that's the blast from the past.
Yes, I know. It was so cutting edge at the time, feels quite
Mhm,
vintage now.
mhm.
And I worked there for about 4 years, and then I moved over to Snapchat, which was the last corporate role that I held. I worked there as an executive for just under 5 years, focused primarily on their media and partnerships. So the content that goes onto Snapchat, which
Ah.
is not really the main reason people use Snapchat, but there is content there. Um, and, had a family throughout this journey, had small kids when I was at Snapchat, and was growing increasingly worried about technology, not just with my kids, but also what I was seeing in the workplace, what I was seeing from the executives around me when we would discuss parental controls and what was possible and what was likely. I started to
Mhm.
feel that, um, although I believe Snapchat was taking although I feel Snapchat was taking the problem seriously, I was worried about how much safety they would really put into the hands of parents, and I wanted that. So I had a moment. I had a moment where I thought, okay, well, I guess I just don't have to let my kids use Snapchat. And then I thought, well, but maybe then I shouldn't work here if I
Mm,
wouldn't let my kids
maybe
use
that's a bit
the
hypocritical. Mm.
yeah. So I can't say I like, stood up from a table and walked out that instant. I didn't.
Jerry Maguire
Um,
style.
but it really had me thinking, is this the place, is technology or big tech companies where I want to continue to further my career? And at
Mhm.
the same time, literally every day at school pickups or drop-offs, every conversation with other parents was not necessarily Snapchat. My kids were really little, but my child is on YouTube and I don't know what they're watching, or
Mm.
I'm allowing them on this video game and it's not going well, or my
Mm.
kid keeps asking me for an iPhone and I'm feeling all this pressure. It just was so clear to me that everyone around me was struggling with
Mhm.
technology. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I know some things from working on the inside about how these companies think and what I believe their sort of long-term approach will be. But I'm also struggling with this at home. And so I decided to start writing about it. So I started my
Mm.
Substack, Thoughts from a Digital Mom, in February of 2023. And my business really started there with just a newsletter as YouTube almost took us down as well.
Oh,
And so,
really?
yeah, that was the one that really I struggled with. I have two boys, they love YouTube and they were watching it. And I had a moment where I walked into the room and I didn't know what they were watching, how long they'd been watching it, and I didn't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
I knew I could figure it out, but I didn't know the answers to those things, and that freaked me out.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to figure this out. And as long as I figure it out, I might as well tell others
How
what
to
I
figure it out.
figured out. Yep, because I knew at least five other families having the same problem. And so I literally started writing first about instruction sets, like this is how you lock down YouTube, this is how you lock down an
Mm.
iPad, whatever.
Yeah.
But we get questions about, some more strategic questions. Why does big tech do this? Why do they approach these devices or these apps the way that they do? And so the newsletter as it stands today really is meant to break down all of the mystifying things for parents. So whether it is a certain app or technology, set of
Yeah.
parental controls, or headlines that are hard to understand or know what you should really worry about, or how to address it. That's really the mission that I'm on, is to help parents with the how. How do I move forward with this? How do I make it safer? How do I make a decision about it? Because it's so complicated and there's so many topics and it keeps changing.
And
Yeah.
every kid and every family is different is the other
Yes,
part. So, there's,
absolutely.
you know, kids have different abilities to self-regulate, for example, and there
Hmm.
are kids of different ages, and there's kids
And
that live in,
interests.
yeah, and interest. There's kids that live in multiple homes. There's, like, I mean, it's
Hmm.
just really very yeah, every family situation is different. So
Yeah,
it is
very
overwhelming.
personal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to jump down the rabbit hole in so many things of like, hey, tell us what you learned about YouTube and this and that. But I guess people are going to find you at Digital Mom and they can get a lot of those instruction sets. So let me ask something else. So what you worked inside, right? You worked inside Snapchat, you worked inside of big tech. What are some of the big takeaways from your time there in terms of, what's driving their strategy and why as parents do we seem so bewildered and frustrated at like why they don't seem to really answer our concerns very well sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the highest level, whether we're talking about a smartphone or we're talking about a social media app, these are activities, surfaces, technologies that were created for grown-ups. They were never designed with kids in mind at the outset. And so while they are now in the hands of kids in many cases, that wasn't the original plan.
Mhm.
Um, in every case, parental controls came afterwards. And so while all of these companies have them now, I wouldn't say all, almost all, um, they're afterthoughts, and they're inherently flawed, because I believe if you are really pure about your intent with parental controls, you're going to lose eyeballs, time spent, all of the metrics that make you a successful business. It's a very different model when you're talking about a piece of technology that is meant for a child, right? So
Yeah.
you're not working against your own instincts to do those things, because you are designing with children and safety in mind. And I think that's the biggest distinction. When we put adult products in the hands of kids, we're putting them at risk.
Yeah, I mean, go figure, behavior tends to follow incentives, right? So, yeah, just the entire structure seems like to me sometimes it's built around, not the same objective the parents have, obviously. And so they're, totally on their objectives and their key results, which are at
Yes.
odds really with what we want, what's best for our kids. That's just the natural fact of it. So, it
For
gives
better,
us
for
a
worse, their businesses. Exactly. So they are
right.
going to look at their bottom lines and their ability to make revenue, and they're going to balance that with any decisions that are going to be limiting factors to growth.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
really designed to, grab your attention and hold it. I mean,
Hmm.
Netflix does this too, right? Like, you gotta
Yes,
watch the next show. There's a cliffhanger right there. You gotta watch the next episode.
Yeah.
So,
They're
and
totally.
really good at it.
and we all know how hard it is to be like, no, it is midnight. I'm going to watch this tomorrow and turn it off.
Yes,
That's so hard. And it's hard for adults. So, it's extra hard for kids.
absolutely. They don't have, we have, in theory, more mature brains that have
Yeah.
had a longer chance to develop impulse controls and all of those things.
Hmm.
And if we're struggling, we couldn't possibly expect kids to be able to withstand those sorts of temptations by design.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask a little bit more about your business. So Digital Mom, you are a content business. You've got the Substack.
Mhm.
Do you have other channels that you're distributing content through?
So, in addition to my Substack, I also do speaking events. I have several speaking events, both with companies through their HRs and also locally with PTAs and community groups. I have launched some courses. So I launched online courses this spring. One that is called Tweens in Tech that allows parents to really get their arms around group chat, decisions about social media, and then ultimately make an informed decision about a device for their child. The second one is called All About Apple, which is literally how to set up controls for any Apple device to make it as safe as is possible. I can't say make it totally safe, but as safe as you could for kids. I also have a couple of webinars coming up this summer. Um, and yeah, those are the different channels that you can find me on.
And so glad that you have a course about how to set up Apple. We get this question all the time. Does Pinwheel have an iPhone, which we would love to have, but you know, not allowed.
Yeah. No, that sounds like you've got a lot of different stuff going on. Is there a part of the business that's really taking off or driving more of your attention?
Yes, I spend more and more time doing events. I find that there are just a lot of groups of parents that are in need of help. And I find that being able to be in person or on Zoom, but just really hands-on with specific topics in that way has been the most beneficial. Parents can ask their specific questions, get their specific questions answered. So that has become a larger part of my business, definitely in the last, I would say, 9 months.
Nice. And so do you kind of view it as the content is the lead funnel and then the events are sort of the main event that you're driving towards, or is it I'm going to build multiple channels or multiple streams of revenue? How do you think about that as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So in the early days, my attitude was do a few different channels, see which ones light up, and then ultimately sort of make specific decisions about how it becomes a funnel or an ecosystem. And so largely, people tend to find me on social media. I have a pretty big following on Instagram and LinkedIn. From there, folks typically will check out my Substack, which is a place I can really share not just deep dives into certain content, but other events or interesting things that might be going on. And usually it is a subscriber of my newsletter that will reach out about an event and say, can you come to this area? Could we do a Zoom? Would you come to my company and work with our HR? Uh, and that's generally how the different life cycles work.
Hmm.
As each one grows, then it becomes possible to add additional lines of revenue. I do some affiliate marketing as well now, which is sort of sprinkled throughout all of those channels.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been really fun as a marketer to learn the different channels and do them in a more modern way than I had traditional roles earlier in my career. Content marketing is everything.
Hmm.
And so it's been really interesting. I would say one of the things I found, I started as a newsletter because I wasn't really expecting to be in front of a camera ever.
Hmm.
And then realized very quickly that
That people don't
to
read.
people don't read as much as I'd like them to, and they're
Yep.
probably going to find you on social media. And if you're
Hmm.
going to do social media, then you do have to do some video content. You have to put yourself out there. And then with the events as well, I always considered myself sort of a shy person and had to get over that. If I'm going to be out there speaking to large audiences and sharing what I know. So that was good self growth along the way,
Hmm.
which has been, I think,
Hmm.
an added bonus of launching my own business.
Yeah, I think Dan, you can attest. There's lots of opportunities for personal growth and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Like lots of things that you didn't think you'd be doing that you're going to be doing, and lots of things
Totally.
that you're going to learn that you know you needed to learn, and
Right.
on and on and on. I mean, do you have advice? I mean, I think so many people out there are thinking about starting something. You've taken this journey where you had a career that was successful. You could have kept doing that, I presume, and
Hmm.
then instead you jump in and take the crazy trip off of the entrepreneurship, wave. So, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for people?
And
I
content
mean,
creators, it's a very
yeah.
popular thing for people to want to take this journey and be content creators.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, for me, and I hope this would be applicable to others thinking about it, I got to a certain point in my career and being tied to a mission became vitally important. And
Mhm.
I knew enough about myself. I'm a helper. I like to help. And I wanted to find a role that suited me, that allowed me to do that. And it's not always evident to you, or it may become evident to you at a different point in your career. Maybe it's evident on day one of your first job, or maybe it takes you 20 years to get there. It's never too late to start a business. But having that conviction, I think drives you, which certainly drove me to figure it out. And it's hard, of course, but it doesn't always feel like work because it feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels like I'm helping, and that is very gratifying. And it's certainly what keeps me going in those days where I feel like I didn't figure that thing out that I needed to, or tried an
Yeah.
experiment and it didn't
Didn't work.
work the way I thought it would be the most amazing result, and it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Mhm.
We've all had
Certainly,
those moments.
yes, right,
In fact,
right.
I like to say, as a marketer as well, I like to say, most things don't work actually. So you just have to just think about like most
Totally.
things don't work. And so it's about having a bigger number of at bats.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that's right. And sometimes it just full blown doesn't work. And sometimes it only takes a little bit of a tweak and a reset or a reframe,
Mhm.
and it could work. So
Mhm.
patience is
Mhm.
certainly part of the game.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think my best advice is it's never too late if you've got a good idea and you've got, the heart behind it. It's always a good time to follow your convictions for sure. But also in this day and age, content marketing is everything. It is absolutely core to everybody's marketing plans, or
Mhm.
frankly, probably needs to be if it's not.
Mhm.
And, as somebody who's not in their 20s, that was a big learning curve. I knew traditional
Mm.
marketing super well.
Mhm.
And I would even include digital marketing
Yeah.
in that, but
Mhm.
I didn't had never really gotten my hands dirty in the day-to-day of content marketing, and it's a lot to learn. It's exhilarating, and when you figure something out, it's amazing, but
Mhm.
it's a craft you have to learn for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, what's your take on, as a content creator, AI tools for you? How are you using them? And,
Mhm.
do you have any thoughts about where we're heading as entrepreneurs and content creators, with now AI's main use case being generative AI? Content
Right.
creation is kind of what it's best at. I mean, it's not there yet on everything, as we know, but tell us about your experience with it. What tools are you
Yeah.
using? Like, how is it going for you? And if you have any insights on where you think it's going, I'd be interested.
Yeah. So I've experimented with it along the way. Certainly in early days of my newsletter, for example, I thought, well, this is great. I could just get AI to like actually type out the instructions set. Oh my gosh, this will save me hours. And I did an experiment, and I remember doing that for one article, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. But I went back and double checked it, and I realized that it was drawing on information that was about 3 years old. So it was not up to date,
Mhm.
because the particular app that I was
Yeah.
diagnosing had
Hmm.
had several updates since then, and so it actually was not accurate. And I'm glad I figured that out early. I'm glad it wasn't a mistake, because thankfully I didn't publish it. I realized what was
Mhm.
missing, and it felt like a cautionary tale to not go too fast with AI, and really think about how it could be useful. And I do think AI is here to stay, and I think as marketers, it will be part and parcel of our roles for a long time. And it is certainly a craft to learn how to create an accurate prompt that will give you what it wants, or what you need, I should say.
Mhm.
But I would say you have to really proceed with caution. I think the part of it that we will always need humans for is to write in human language.
Mhm.
There is a tone and a way of expressing oneself that seems to be very AI-ish, and it's not the way we all speak, and it's homogenizing language in some ways that I don't
Mhm.
Mm.
love. I
Mhm.
worry
Yeah.
about it for kids too, because I
Mhm.
think you can get a little bit lazy with your creative thinking and your reasoning and all of those things when you don't actually have to work out answers.
Mhm.
But I do think AI can be extraordinarily helpful for organizational, administrative components of marketing, scheduling, or just making a content plan where you put all of the things you want to do together and it will help you come up
Yeah,
with a way to
organize it.
express. But I do
Right.
still think that um, individualized content, I think will almost always be able to tell the difference, and that is just better coming from.
Yeah, and definitely double check. There was a story recently
Hmm.
about a big newspaper, right, who had like published summer book recommendations for books that didn't exist.
Yes. So it's in conversation, and you can cut this part out if this is not appropriate, but um, I often refer to AI as my drunk intern because I feel like there are flashes of brilliance, like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of mediocrity, and then sometimes like just straight up made up answers where
Wrong.
you're like,
Yeah.
did you even read the brief?
The
Like, are you
instructions.
just straight up making this up because you're hungover? What's happening here? So
Very
That's
similar
funny.
experience. So yeah,
proceed with
glad to know
caution,
that
right?
we're all having the same experiences. It's so crazy. Sometimes you'll be out there in the greater content universe of tech hype, and it's like, wow, people are doing this with AI, and they're doing that with AI, and it's like, oh, they're and then I get this FOMO as an entrepreneur, of like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not
I should be doing
actually
that.
yeah, if I'm
Right,
not actually utilizing this, are my competitors utilizing it? Are they, being
right.
more
I'm
efficient than
already
me? Are they
behind.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I go and try the tools, and I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
I think that there's a bit of a hype cycle here. I mean, don't get me wrong, like you are, I'm using AI and getting a lot of value out of it for sure, in different ways, but it's not quite the sort of transformative, like, change everything, build $1 billion business with one person kind of promise that, you
Right.
hear in the hype, the tech hype world.
And and
And
and you still
as
have to check
agentic
it.
AI comes out, like there's this sort of to Dane's point about hype. It's like, oh, you can hire like AI team members and they can just work autonomously. And you're like, the people can't even do that. Like,
Well, right.
how are you going to get the AI to do it?
I mean, working from home and working in offices, you even see a difference in those unscripted moments where you have a conversation with a coworker and a new idea comes out.
Thumbs up.
We saw how much of that, is a bit diminished in a completely virtual world when we had to do that, and that's still
Mm-hmm.
with humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's certain tasks that could be done in a vacuum autonomously, I'm sure, but even those I would wonder and argue there's probably benefit to the being around the other conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and taking that in and being able to react to that because new
Yeah.
ideas aren't necessarily going to happen, you know, in a step by step. Sometimes it's a bit
Yeah,
of a messy line.
I'm all about AI complementing humans right now. I think that's
Yeah,
just the stage that we're at. Humans need to review it, they need to check it, they need to know what it's doing and sort of be on top of it.
for sure.
The agentic promise I think is interesting, and it's just not there yet in my experience. Like you just
Hmm.
can't turn these things loose and expect them to do great work, which is what you have to do to compete today. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they have to be watched, they have to be carefully monitored, and they have to be quality checked for sure, to get any kind of results out of my experience. Still very helpful.
Yes.
Nice. So thank you for being a Pinwheel customer. I appreciate
Yeah.
that a lot, and for being a content creator that said something about Pinwheel. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with phones and how did you find us, and how's it gone?
Yeah, happy to. So I found you. You didn't find me. I have a sixth grader. So my eldest son is about to finish his first year of middle school, sixth grade here. And we had gotten through elementary school with a pretty low tech watch. He had a
Okay.
gizmo watch
Mm-hmm.
that meant he could only text with mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, which I recognize is not maybe the case, everybody who's deciding whether or not to give their child an iPhone or not for middle school, which is a big milestone decision point, is not everyone's doing it with the same kid or the same reasons in mind. Our use case was I had a child who had made it through elementary school and had never sent a chat or a message to anyone. Um, and I needed to get out of the business of arranging play dates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wanted to foster some independence in
Independence. Mm-hmm.
my kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I didn't need to give him a computer in his pocket. I needed
Mm-hmm.
him to be able to contact me and my husband. I needed him to be able to find his friend after school. And that's what I needed this device for. So And I also was worried about watches being too buzzy, too much distraction by being attached to the body. So I started looking at I call them parent managed phones. I'm sure there's like
Mhm.
a different way of saying it.
Pretty good word.
Yeah, we call
Um,
them kid-specific phones. Parent
Yeah.
managed is a good word too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I always refer to this category
Mhm.
as, and I knew that that was the category I wanted to look at. I needed strong parental controls. I needed the ability to see his messages because he'd never sent a text message before. I talk a lot about this in my course, but you really
Mhm.
need to coach kids through text messaging when they start. It's
Yeah.
nuanced and complicated.
And lots of
Six
room for misunderstanding.
so much room for
Mhm.
misunderstanding. Sixth grade boys think that they are stand-up comedians and the jokes don't always land. And you have to learn all of that, right? You don't have a face in front of you. And, I wanted to coach him, not just spy on him or whatever,
Mhm.
but actually coach him through this so I could point some things out and help him figure out how to do this, which also meant I didn't want to turn on group chat right away.
Mhm.
And I didn't want the ability for photos and gifs and memes and all of that on day one either.
Mhm.
So those were really important components to me. I wanted to see the content of the messages. I didn't want to wait just for an alert because this is my tech background, but I just feel like language moves at the speed of light. Kids are very clever. There are many coded ways to express things that I don't know if those would
Yeah.
I don't know if those would always
Yeah.
get picked up in an
Alerting
alert
is
system.
difficult for those reasons.
Yes. And I know that some of the parent managed phones do an alerting system. I like that
Mhm.
Pinwheel, I could read the messages from my
Mhm.
phone, and there was no app store, there was no internet, but that if I wanted to pull down a specific app, there was a way to do that. And then we're a Verizon customer, so I knew that I could use this device with our existing Verizon account. So
Nice.
those were all the boxes that lined up for me. Really
Mhm.
strong parental controls being, of course, the most important piece of that across the board, the time management, all of that too.
Mhm.
And so when I looked at all of the different devices, this checked all of the boxes I was looking for. And I could use it I would have paid for another service. That to me was a nice to have and not a necessary. That was just a
Mm.
bonus. But it really
Mhm.
came down to the monitoring and the way that text messaging is handled.
And that
Yeah.
you could start at one place and kind of add
Yeah,
on. Sounds like that was another key
that's
component.
exactly right. So we
Mhm.
started, bare bones, and it's been fascinating. Those early texts, I would literally see my son being like, dude, my mom can read this. And I was like, good. I want everyone to know I can read
Everybody
it.
Yeah.
should, right?
I think everyone behaves a little bit better if they think there might be a grown up in the
Someone's
room, so to
watching.
speak.
People
Mhm.
definitely behave better if they think someone's watching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's how we started. I think I turned on group chat probably by Christmas, but the
Mm.
rule was you can have a group chat with 2 to 3 people in it. It can't be the entire class version of it because I
Oh.
literally now run a business helping parents who have children in classroom wide group chats where things aren't going well. So
Mhm.
that was my
Mhm.
other restriction there.
That's a really great insight, and I appreciate that just on a parent to parent level. Like I hadn't thought about demarking on just number of people in the chat, but that's definitely true that some of the larger chats that my kids have been in have been the ones that
Are
don't go as
problematic.
They
well.
get
So it's like,
spicy.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
also just the number of notifications that you have in
Yes.
chats that are that large, right? This
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
very much constant. If your notifications are on, just constant pinging
Yeah.
all day. My husband's family has a group chat and it is, I have to mute
Chatty.
those. And there's only
Yeah.
like 15 of them, but
Right.
some days they're very chatty. Yeah.
And you don't know, I say this a lot in my talks too, you don't know a lot of times when you're making these tech decisions, you don't know yet if you have a super tech motivated kid or if they're in a
Right.
super tech motivated friend group.
Right.
Yeah.
So you may wind up with a kid who has a couple of friends. This would be our use case. There's
Mhm.
like they're all pretty laid back and they
Mhm.
literally only use their devices to find each other after school and tell their parents. There's just not a lot of action, at
Right.
least that I've
No, they
seen.
don't have whole conversations about all of the drama that happens over text.
No. And then
No, and I think
my
there's
neighbor across the street has a daughter who's like the constant pinging has become such a thing, right? So
Mhm.
it varies widely and you don't always know, so much of it has to do with the friend groups which develop over time and it
Yeah.
depends what technology they have and what their rules are that I
Mm.
wanted a device that had a lot of control that I could release over time as opposed to something you're constantly trying to whack-a-mole.
To whack-a-mole, yeah, that's such a great insight that you don't as a parent, when you're starting this journey, you understand, okay, I'm concerned about this set of things. And what you don't know is how everybody else is going to interact. I
That's
mean,
right.
it could be, right. That's the piece that you don't know. And one of the reasons that collective action is so helpful is because you can have some more you have some more community norms around it.
Yes.
It's as if, if all the other parents in your community thought that having keg parties in high school was fine, and you're the only one that doesn't think that, it makes it very hard to
Hard to
put
keep your kids from getting drunk.
restrictions. Yeah, it's hard to put those restrictions on when the community norm is something else.
It's
And
hard to be the
so
only one.
yeah. So to the extent that there are community norms about, hey, the other parents don't allow texting all night long. So, if nobody else allowed texting all night, you're not going to be talking to anyone. So you just go to bed. There's
Right.
nobody to talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and we've definitely seen a bit of the boy-girl split. Of course, this doesn't apply to every kid, but there is these girl groups that get really big and get a little more chatty, and your boys can get into this too, but just statistically, it seems like from our experience running thousands and thousands and tens of thousands really of phones, yeah, they're definitely you'll get earlier and earlier use of this kind of super chat stuff from the girl groups, I'd say
Yes.
statistically,
I
and
would
just
say I've observed that.
a lot more chatty. So yeah, you gotta know your kid. Like each kid is different. I've got very different kids, and we have to parent them
Same.
differently.
Same.
Same. I
Yeah,
think
for
I got
sure.
off pretty easy with my older one. We'll see what happens with the younger one. But he figured out the poop emoji on his gizmo within like 10 seconds of
10
having it. And I was
seconds.
like,
Yeah.
I don't think your older brother ever found the emojis on here, but okay, different
And
kid.
like you said, they think that's hilarious. You're like, okay.
Hilarious.
Yeah, you gotta do so much training to do, and I think it's hard. There's so many jobs to do as a parent. Now we giving you another one. You've got to train your kids digitally, so just having the best tools to do that is what
Yeah.
we try to do at Pinwheel. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for that and for creating some content around your experience as well. So it's awesome, and we appreciate it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the Digital Mom brand seems like a great name. Really, really right on point, which makes sense for a professional marketer like you to have such a like on point name. And we've got like our digital mom who's going to like explain it to us how this works so we can
Right.
so we can actually learn how to use it well. So great job on the name. Is there any story behind it, or did you brainstorm a lot, or how did that come about?
I don't think I spent that much time on this name. I do, back in the annals of my work history, I did work as a naming consultant for a time, so I have a
Oh,
little bit of
See,
that
there
in
you
my
go.
DNA. I
it's
was
just
a
like yeah,
verbal.
you just know. Yeah, you're just good at it.
I literally held a role once. My title was verbal identity specialist. So
Wow. That's specialized.
it was pretty cool, and it was great training on how to name things. So I definitely drew on that experience when I was thinking about it. So I wanted something that was clear and that you could sort of imagine what it would do for you if you were to consume content from this source. But I was also speaking about myself. I am a digital mom. I am a mom. I come from the technology world. I'm a technologist. And so in some ways it was really just a manifestation of who I am. But I like that it also feeds into the fact that I can, as your mom, tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, like I said, I'm so tempted to have asked you. I mean, I feel like we just barely hit the tip of the iceberg here in just like 30 minutes or so of like what all the things that you know about this space and that you're sharing with people. Could you just state again for the audience, where can they find you clearly so that people can follow up and get all of this great information from you?
Absolutely. So my Substack is called Thoughts from a Digital Mom. And I also have a website. It's an easy one, digitalmom.me. If you go there, you can find all sorts of information about me, about events, about upcoming webinars, courses, all that kind of good stuff. And if you're on social media, I'm on Instagram at Digital Momming, and I'm on TikTok at TFA Digital Mom.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. So much fun.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye.
From the best of minds, it's a tech talk for these digital times. It's a tech talk.
Awesome. So that was a fascinating conversation. She's in the thick of it, just like we are, parenting kids and building a business. And yeah, it's so much good nuggets, I think, for people that are either parents or entrepreneurs in what she talked about as an expert marketer. And I feel like it's a little bit meta that, like, we're getting ourselves out there in this podcast right now, and actually creating content and talking about creating
Creating
content while we're
content.
creating content. So very meta conversation for me. But yeah, what do you take away from her experience?
Well, with her experience with the business, I think that one of the key insights that she had in in transitioning as a marketer to going from more traditional marketing to being a content creator, and instead of at a big company you would have a team member who
Yep.
was in the weeds with their hands dirty, and now she's doing it, and it is quite different to do versus to direct. So that was, and that is the journey of the entrepreneur, and is getting your hands dirty with all the pieces.
I love it. And I mean, it kind of fits into my thesis of the future of work a bit, her whole career path, in that I don't know that there's going to be as many stable, great jobs at big companies in the future with AI, but I think there's going to be just this proliferation of huge opportunities for small entrepreneurship. And when I say small, that doesn't have to mean that you're making less money. I think there's going to be opportunities to build basically businesses that are, only a few people, but really provide niche value into just very small areas. I mean, and digital parenting is not a small area, it supports a lot, but still, it's like you can build a business and you can build a sustainable income, using all these great AI tools to automate a lot of your work and to do a lot of, we kind of went back and forth on this conversation, whether we were pro AI or negative AI. Long term, to be clear, I'm pro AI. I think it's going to be doing great stuff. Anyway, so it's just interesting to see her kind of living what I think is going to be maybe potentially a lot of our kids' futures, maybe too, to need to have the skill set to sort of, support themselves. And I don't know, that was kind of where my head was going.
Yeah, and I find it so on the future of work. So I found it so interesting, and I don't think that larger organizations are, they're typically less efficient, and so because there's a lot of human and political overhead that occurs. And so if if you broke that apart to a lot of individual fiefdoms, you trade that for the coordination. But, in that world, anyone who can solve the coordination of those
Yeah.
various pieces is,
Well,
will win.
yeah, I had this debate with somebody just the other day where this is like my laying awake at night kind of fear, kind of talking. But yeah, the past has always been that small companies get this efficiency from versus big companies, and we're able to compete, right? Because of the efficiency of each
Well,
one
and
of our people's
speed.
work, and the speed and efficiency, right? And so the big companies, they slow down from bureaucracy and bloat, and they just can't get as much done as efficiently. And I was laying awake wondering, but if this agentic AI future comes true, there could be this big company, sort of advantage where all of a sudden they can reinvest in better and better and better agentic AI that keeps that bureaucracy and that bloat at bay and actually drives their efficiency up and actually sees them become more and more successful. Anyway, I don't know that
Maybe.
future is going to happen. And even if it does, I still think there's sort of a limiting factor on sort of how many niches that a big company really it makes sense for them to go into. And so really either way, I think there's going to be a big proliferation. It could be both. Like they're not necessarily mutually exclusive futures is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It is it's a really exciting time. Have you, so what would, like, have you had any wins in AI this week?
Oh my gosh. Yes, there's been some really great stuff I've been doing with AI. Like we've been building a sort of a side project, an internal tool with AI, and we are basically building our own company's sort of RAG systems, retrieval augmented generation system, where we're putting all of our company data into one big store from like many different tools, and then pulling information out, and just architecting that is a big task. And I
Yeah.
think using AI to architect our AI system again is very meta, but
Very meta.
that's what we're doing is sort of, as opposed to having to get really high priced and expensive experts to come in and sort of help us with the architecture, we can kind of get going and just ask AI, like, what's the right architecture here? How do we build this up? And there's still a lot of work to do. Like, that's what I was saying, like AI is a help right now. It's not replacing anybody for sure. In our organization, it's definitely not replacing anybody. As I think you'd probably agree, we're looking to hire more people. We're looking to hire people that know how to use AI. So
Yeah.
I think so we've gotten the architecture story there. I use it with investors and investor communication. A lot of the job of CEO is communicating and writing words. Like creating words is a lot of what I have to do as a CEO. So just being able to have this AI that knows all about the business, I've been feeding it like our monthly financials, right? So here's all the financials. Now it can produce some reports directly for me and keep itself informed of sort of our progress in our business. So there is a data gravity to it for sure. And the more it knows about me, the more valuable it becomes. And it's kind of this a little bit freaky loop, but
Yeah.
that's the truth.
And yet I think to your point, this week I was redoing the email cadence and Claude wrote most of the emails, but I still had to say, okay, here are the segments. This is the branching. I still had to draw the little chart for myself about, okay, these people need to get this, then this. And it's writing the emails, but it nevertheless still took me hours because I have to do all of the thinking part. So,
Yeah, and I think I think in your organization, in the marketing department, you guys have been building with Lovable, some tooling and stuff internally, right? And I've been building on Lovable too. And that one is probably like that and V0, like these are my favorite, like agentic AIs type of stuff. That's like really high leverage where you're like, wow, this is pretty incredible. But even there, it makes some stupid mistakes. And as somebody who's, done engineering in my past, I've written software for many years. I don't do it anymore. But at least I have the ability when I see it going off track to say like, no, this data model doesn't make any sense. And I still have to do that, right? I still have to be able to say, this data model doesn't make sense. This pattern doesn't make sense. I still have to be able to debug and QA. And there's still a lot of things that if you're going to use it effectively, you need to know how to do today.
Yeah, we're not there yet. So anyway, on her, I thought it was on Sarah, on Digital Mom. I thought it was it was really interesting, to have this journey. And to your point, to circling back, there's so many people, you read surveys that so many people want to be content creators, especially, like high school kids, they think they think of this as a career path, being a content creator. And, it's a little bit like I'm going to be a rock star or a movie celebrity or something, and but it's, so it's really interesting to talk to somebody who is doing it. And, it's probably a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah, it's like a piece of your business. I think that's the better way to think about it, right? The analogy breaks down a little bit with the rock star or the actor or whatever pathway that's like, 0.01% of people or less than that, 0.001% of people build a career out of it. With this, it's more like if you want to be Mr. Beast, it's like, it's a good analogy. But there's so many people like Sarah, and I think like us, like what we're doing right now, where this is a piece of our business. It's not the entire business. But it's something that, you need to be competent at and is helpful, or it's more like helpful if you are competent at and or partner with somebody who is competent at it. And and it's just a piece that you kind of need to bring on board, right?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. So great episode. Thanks, Sarah, again. And we'll see y'all later.
See you later on Technically Parenting.